Bulbs. These are flowering bulbs, but we can eat a lot of the bulbs, not these guys. Garlic, onion, and a lot of these onion varieties actually are excellent on roofs as long as you can reach them. So that's another thing that you can think about. And they don't need as much water actually. So I wanted to talk about those really quick a little bit, and then some other things. Because as a gardener and a food growing professional, whether you do it for your home only or for a business, you want to feed your pollinators. You want to feed your team. And your team is microbes, fungus, insects. That's all on your team. Even birds. They help control a lot of problems, although they eat some of the berries. So you want to take care of them. If you cannot grow food on that roof, you can grow food for somebody else. You can grow food for the critters, for the pollinators. And clover is one of those plants that you don't ever have to mow. You don't ever have to fertilize. It can actually survive and do okay in 2 inches of soil, in 4 inches of growing media, it will be thriving. You don't have to water it in the summer if you don't want to. It will keep flowering. In fact, if you don't water so much and you stress it a little bit, it will flower more for you, because that's one way to have more flower, is torture the poor things. But then your insect colony will be happy. And it provides also some food for some of the birds around. So you can actually make your roof into a habitat that benefits your other production. And always think about pollinators as a big, vast group of insects. Bees are very, very, very important. But there are others too. In fact, a lot of times you're looking at something thinking it's a bee and it's a fly. Yeah?
Just wondering, how do the other varieties of clover compare?
They do well too. I mean, the more common it is, the better it's going to do. This is one of the fancier ones. And clover, there are tropical versions, and there are clover plants that do really good in our climate. In Singapore, for example, a lot of the roofs and walls are made of clover because they grow, they are evergreen, they never have to water them, and they never have to mow them. So they are an excellent plant for these applications. I want to tell you about edible rain gardens. Unless your rain garden is receiving water from a clean source, it's not a good idea to grow food in a rain garden. If you do not want to drink runoff from a parking lot, you probably don't want to eat the carrot that grew in that. Just think about that, where your water source is from. If, however, you have a green roof that you're draining off of water, you can put in a rain garden nearby and grow all kinds of things. That's the rain garden that we have at the edible garden here, and we have runoff coming from a green roof. Before we get into the walls, and I will talk about all of those because it's a fun thing, I want to hand this around so that you guys actually see one of the systems that I do prefer using when I do talk about larger green roof systems that are solid systems. This is not a modular system. The modular model, I have some information here. However, I really want to do research because that's something that changes all the time. There are new companies coming and going with their modular green roof solutions almost every week. And there are a gazillion now. It used to be the 1 or 2 kinds of solution. Well, you compared them, this is better, that's not so good. But it's not that way anymore. There are even modules that have openings on the sides, so soil contact, growing media contact can be established between your cells. And that's important because what is found is that when you have the whole roof connecting, you start to have a very limited but still existing mycelium formation. And when that gets going, your plants will get better immune systems and they will do better. So modular systems that allow cells to touch are more durable when it comes to plants. Before also we get into the walls, I will do this, and I want to talk about soils really quick as well. So when you look at this, I want you to look through the layers. And the reason I like this system is because this does not require that foam underlay. It's really pretty sturdy and pretty durable when you touch these. However, remember that if you put it on a roof where raccoons can easily get it, those guys don't have nails, they have claws. And that can still be a problem. And they also chew. And that goes with other critters too. So just something to keep in mind. But this functions without the foam layer.
So if these aren't modulars, and if it's one sheet, if you have that damage, then how is that replaced?
Well, first you have to find the damage.
Right.
So you have to take out the plants and the soil and hope that you're doing it in the right spot. And then you have special tools, just like for pond liners, where you can create a seal. We have the roofs in, again, majority of roofs, the major bulk of it is 15, maybe 20 years old in some places. How long that patch lasts versus the rest of the roof, we don't know. That can be a continuing problem if in another 5 years or 10 years you have to keep going back. It's a good idea to map your problems on a roof. So if you have another leak the next time, you don't have to go like, well, I don't know, the manager did that, but he's retired 5 years ago. I don't know where that was. Pull up the map and say, oh, 5 feet in from this corner and 10 feet from the other corner. Let's start looking here. It helps. I usually map irrigation lines and like everything that goes unseen afterwards. If I dug a trench, I want to know where it is later, and that's good for any gardening, because if you don't know where your trenches are, you can dig up the whole garden and not find the leak. So it's a good practice anyway, but in terms of roofs, it can save you a lot of money and time and headache. With the modular, it's a little easier. You pick it up, move it, and then if that's not the problem, you put it back and you just sort of keep going modular to modular. But remember that those are heavy. Even in the smaller pieces, they are heavy. So this pick up and move is not that easy. So there are not really easy solutions to that. Yeah, it's easier to repair a standard roof than a green roof. So once again, you see all of these layers, and then this layer is what's underneath the soil, the growing media. So on top of this sits growing media. It's another good thing about, there's another good thing about this is that it covers the whole roof, and the way they're managing anchoring as it comes to maintenance is that it's a plate that sort of covers a large area on that roof. It's not drilled through into the roof, but it's sitting on top of the roof. So it doesn't open it up for leaks, yet it can handle a lot of weight because it's the whole roof surface that it sits on. So you can just sort of look at this and look at what the layers are. It gives you the description. And then as far as soil mix goes, where you get your soil mix from makes a very, very big difference. The Mukilteo City Hall was our very good example of that here in our area. When the City Hall roof was built, the contractor decided to bring in not the green roof mix that was specified, but another one because they could save money on bringing it in. And it was still a green roof mix. It was a legitimate green roof mix. So they brought that in, and they put it on the roof. And they planted everything. And within 6 months, the roof had weeds, unimaginable numbers. All the plants had died, and then the weeds died. And so everything was dead. So they tried to figure out what happened. They tested for all kinds of pesticides and chemicals, and no, not in it. It turned out it turned out that it actually was a soil mix that is made out of manure instead of yard waste-based compost. What do we have in manure? Salts. And when you combine that in a large volume and in an area where it cannot really dissolve, it's not a top layer in a garden where you apply it and then it just sort of like breaks down with microbes getting to it. Back to the manure thing. So when you put the manure down in a garden setting, it's not impacting the plants with salt levels right there. But on a roof, where there is nowhere for the plants to go, the microbes are not there in the soil because it's a growing media, it will impact them. So with manure, you have wheat seeds. And then when the salt starts kicking in and it dissolved in large enough volume that took 6 to 7 months in this case, all of a sudden it's rubbing water out of the plants instead of allowing them to pick it up. So you want to make sure that your green roof mixture is one that is actually a good one. And avoid manure in your green roof mixture. Manure is great in a garden, not a good solution for low impact development. Same goes for rain gardens, disaster. So there is also, by the way, experimenting going on with green roof mixes with biochar. And that we don't have data on it yet enough, but it could be something that actually will be a good and sustainable solution rather than having these artificial particles that are just created out of bad things anyway.
Oh, you mean biochar as a aeration amendment?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, because it's lightweight, it can hold on to a lot of water, it can do a lot of different things. It can actually hold on to nutrients and release them slowly. So there are a lot of interesting experiments out there. And I think that, in the next 10 years, we may get to a place where green roofs will be much more user-friendly in terms of earth. But at the moment, just be cautious when you're looking at them and when you're planning on using them. It's important to just know that. Living walls. The reason I am doing stormwater management and not just food growing and all of that is I'm really, really fascinated truly about vegetation and soils and how they can be used and what is out there. And I try to work with it and experiment. And sometimes I have great ideas and sometimes I have really bad ideas, and we try them anyway. And so I've been actually playing around with living walls and vertical plantings for quite some time now. And my goal always is to try to do things that is using sustainable methods and materials. So I had this great idea in 2009 as we were designing our flower and garden show display. The strawberry wall, that's gonna be so cool. I woke up at 2 in the morning, I made the drawing, and then there it was, and then we built it and we put it up, and Cisco came, and it was just like the hottest thing on the whole show. And then I took it home and I built it there. So I thought, okay, well, let's see how this works. It was a great idea. What happens? And so months go by, it looks really beautiful. A friend of mine said, oh, can you do something like that for me too? So we did that. And then it just looked more and more and more awful. Because we had critters coming and climbing up there, not slugs, because it does take it away from the slug zone. So that term, excellent. It also takes it out of the 3-year-old reach. So you actually have a chance at having strawberries if you have little kids around. But squirrels were pulling on the plants. Birds were pulling on the plants. I found myself every morning finding strawberries on the ground and trying to tuck it in and just working with that, and it just looked worse and worse. And then the strawberries started growing, and then it would do these branches that were coming out. So I thought, well, that was a great idea. So then I created this pellet-looking system because I thought maybe if I support them from the side, then nobody can pull it out. Well, yeah, I had a higher chance of the plants staying in place. But they grew and they were very funny looking, and they, instead of drooping down, which you would expect strawberries to do, because they were sideways, they first started growing upwards because gravity was calling on them. And then they fell, so they always looked inverted. It was just one of those really strange looking systems. And then at the end of the year, I was noticing I have these giant pockets where soil is missing. Oh, it's all gone. It washed out. So scratch that. We built this really strange bookcase type arrangement. I think I have a picture of it somewhere. This is socks now. But it's practically a wall with a, well, very straight line. Wall between two posts. And then you have these 2x sort of materials that come out and go in like this. So it is, you can put a little bit of a support if you want, but you don't really have to do that either, actually. And that, what we found, it's, well, it reaches further. Yeah, that's how it looks like, actually. Great. I love these new pens. They are so alcohol-filled that it's making you feel happy. So you fill it with soil. It stays in there really well. And then you plant, and the plant will be growing the right way, being able to grow out and fall over that edge. And that works. So one thing that I will be going over lots of different systems, but what I found is that if we honor the plant in terms of how it wants to grow on Earth when it comes to gravity, it will do better. So if you want to grow food, strawberries, lettuce, and all of these other things that can do good, still create a little horizontal surface for them and put that up in a vertical structure rather than try to turn them sideways, because they will fight you with that. And it takes a lot of energy out of them, actually. So they will not be able to flower and fruit so much because they keep trying to grow with that gravity drive. The lettuce will be bitter because it's just trying to grow out of its sideways turned system. And if you have it like this, it's still just like in a garden in a container. So then I use a lot of compost socks. In fact, I'm going to Ohio this weekend, and we'll have a couple of very important meetings with them talking about some good solutions that they are creating. Compost socks is a very important technology.
What's the name you're saying? Compost?
Socks. S-O-X-X. That's the trade name. The socks can be made of generally two types of materials. One breaks down, totally biodegradable. Here in the Northwest, it's gone in about 60 days. So it's very temporary. In other parts of the world, it can last up to a year. But because we have such high moisture here, it doesn't. So here it's 2 months. And then the other is actually still petroleum-based. It lasts indefinitely if it's not exposed to UV. Out of the actual content in this entire wall, volume-wise, when it comes to the materials, 2% of the materials are socks. The rest is compost and roots once you plant it. The reason I am actually loving this product is that because it helps establish vegetation in a meaningful way, helps you to create natural cliffs and stabilize ground and slope without adding to your load of carbon footprint, industrial disturbance, because you can do these from distance. You don't have to build a road, an infrastructure. You can just have the system. You can plant it, and you want to plant it. They are working on some materials right now that will be 100% beneficial. And so I'm really interested in going and seeing what's going on. I'm very excited. So.
The cost per square foot on that
It really varies. These guys here are in inches. These are 12-inch socks, and these here are 24-inch socks. So your cost will differ. The 12-inch socks usually $8.50 to $13.50 a foot, blown into place. Yeah, they blow this in. And I will have probably, I think I have images, and if not, I'll pull up another show, a slideshow.
What's the length of that?
Oh, this one here?
No, if you're spending $8.50 to $13.50, how much area have you actually covered?
Well, with a 1 foot sock, 1 square foot with 1 foot long, and that's 1 square foot.
Wow.
Yes, but you don't have to build a road. You're using compost, you are planting, and you'll be surprised to know that because you don't even have to excavate, it's less expensive than a concrete block wall. In fact, it's a fraction of the cost. We use these for slope stabilizations, and the cost is unbelievable. The maximum cost is about 25%, but that's very high compared to concrete systems. So it's still a real good financially sustainable practice. And it creates skilled jobs. It requires skill. So it's a higher level, higher quality work. It's better for your community. And it recycles the compost product and helps with the vegetation. Then you can also put it in place in smaller segments. It's cheaper that way. For a food garden, it's good. Around kids and people who have problems with walking and being steady, if they fall, they're not going to hurt themselves. I really do wish that when my daughter was little, we had compost socks, because she broke out so many teeth from climbing on rocks and concrete, I can't tell you. And if I had this around, big deal. So, and they work just like concrete when it comes to retaining wall, because you can actually substitute keystone block wall with this. You use the geotextile fabric, you do the backfill, and it's just as stable. But you don't have to have added drainage system to it, because it lets the water through. I mean, the savings all add up.
So what do these look like after time? I mean, wouldn't weeds and stuff?
No, you plant it.
I
I think I will have some images here. Let me see.
Oh, and there's ones on campus.
Yeah, we have those. Here is where it's blowing in. This is a big tube, and they really, I mean, they can blow it in 500 feet away now. They used to be 300, it's up to 500 now. That means you can park a truckway over there, start it up, you pull your hose. You really didn't have to take apart the whole site to get to that area where you're working, and you blow it in. And then you just stack it, no excavation needed. You come through and you plant it. You can even plant it seeded. In some areas where grass is and other type, even carex is and such, you mix that right into your the soil mix, blow that in, and it will grow right through the socks. Well, that's one shorter socks. These are 42 inches. And the good thing about it, if it's dry, it's 45 pounds. When it's wet, it's about 60 pounds. And you can build retaining walls around the garden bed easy. These are other things that you will see, these little planter pockets. If you want to grow food and you have vertical areas, this is excellent. And some of these fabrics are fabrics that will break down. You can even make your own. You can make these out of felt. You can make it out of burlap bags. And you can have little hanging bags and such that you plant into. The question is what's behind it, because it will be moist, right? And you will have a whole bunch of things happening on the back side of it, including maybe some mold or mildew, or something will happen there. Insects will try to nest there. So if you put it, for example, just straight on a fence, it will deteriorate your fence, right? That's usually a wood fence. So You want to have a material behind it that can take that. Composite material is good. That's something to think of. If you have a metal siding, for example, that may be good if it's on a shed. I wouldn't recommend this without barriers on the wall of a house. If you want to do planters on a house, you have to go back to the layers that are similar to the green roof material, making sure that there is a drainage layer, there is in case any water, it's moved away from the house, not penetrating through the wall, and you want root barriers there, and you want an insulation layer as well. So you can get very creative building these vertical structures. There is a French guy, Patrick something, I can't remember his name. Shoot, well anyway. He's the godfather of all green balls. Very eccentric, a little bit crazy, has these, the LeBlanc, that's right. He's got green fingernails that he actually paints green, and just like he has real green thumbs. And a funny guy, he's an excellent presenter. And he is an artist. So his green walls, thank you, his green walls are beautiful. And that's an important detail too, because you want these things look good. At the time of installation, they are beautiful. You see them all over on Facebook, beautiful wall pictures. But what happens as time goes by? If it's not maintained, it's not going to look good anymore. He actually uses a felt-based material that does not break down, and it grows algae very well. And we found that out here in the Northwest when he designed and built the Goodwill Wall in Tacoma. It looked fantastic when it went in, and within 6 months, it was a wall of algae. And so now they have this green wall that they have to monthly maintain, heavily maintain, not maintain like you would in a flower bed, front door, go through and pick a few weeds. No, no. Change plants, put plants in. Change plants, put plants. Scrub the algae. Make sure that it's presentable. Constant work. And that's something to think about, that vertical plantings are high maintenance. If you really have no other space, because you are in the middle of the city and all you have is a small little patio, and you do want to grow food, you can add a lot of surface and a lot of area if you go up. You can get up 8 feet. Imagine that. I mean, that's a lot of area that you can grow in. But it will be high maintenance in many ways. It will be more maintenance than if you did that in a garden space. So it's actually sometimes to think about. Vertical garden outside my living room door, or a pea patch around the corner. You can think about those things. What makes more sense to you? Because the wall area will require more management. Another big deal about walls is irrigation. I'll change the picture so you don't go totally bored. Straw bales actually are fun. You can do those very temporarily, but you can do it. Not everything grows well in a straw bale, and there are some tricks to it. Again, there are people now who put maybe a compost biochar mix inside the straw and plant into that. They actually grow food better than just in the straw, so it depends on what you're growing. But it can be done. And so back to the irrigation on walls. When you think about it, that you're watering a wall, what are your thoughts right away? What comes to mind, like right away, challenges?
Gravity.
Yes. Yes, what happens? You water up here, and the plant below is drowning. Because no matter how much water you put out here, if you have a wall that is solid, connected, all the water will go down to the bottom. Vancouver Aquarium discovered it the hard way. They built a beautiful, gorgeous green wall out of a metal frame structure that actually works, except they had this idea of let's use gravity for our benefits and water on top so everything gets watered. Well, the top was dry, the middle area was beautiful, and the bottom was drowning. So then they figured out that they have to break up the irrigation system. They had to redo the whole wall first. So a very costly experiment. But they learned a lot. We learned a lot. Anybody who wants to do walls learned a lot. It pays well if you break up your wall, even with seams that are not necessarily visible from the outside, that breaks up the soil space. And then you water those in individual zones. Yep.
Can't that work, make drip irrigation work if you're putting lines?
Yeah,
in that
but still,
water down?
it's the same thing. With the drip, it will still, yeah. And also know that we have irrigation mats for green roofs and green walls. And it will do the same thing because water really will work with gravity only. And so you will have a problem with watering unless you break it up into zones. And depending on what plant you're growing, you may have to have quite a few zones, actually. Here we go with concrete living walls. These are concrete planters, and they are really cool, too, when they grow in. Extensive, beautiful walls. And then there is actually another new technology that's emerging now. Really fascinating. It can be made out of a lot of different materials, and it's probably going to give us vertical rain garden spaces because it will be able to hold stormwater and grow vertically. And it will be also very good for vertical gardening and really modular and easy.
Where's that coming out of?
Denver, Colorado. That's where George Bigger is, and he's working hugely. Hopefully we will have a demonstration project here in the Northwest soon. So hopefully in a year or so. Plantings that go on a wall and don't require maybe so much maintenance, but will not look good all the time. Mushrooms are great. They can grow in no matter what that area is directed as. Vertical, flat, doesn't matter. But mushrooms, these are fruiting bodies, right? So there are periods when there is nothing. So it's not going to be that beautiful, but can be very useful if you're growing food. Ferns, and some of the ferns can be used as herbs. Some others, like lady fern in the spring, can actually be used as a food. They are habitat features. And again, I talked about clover. Clover, guys, is a plant that's goofy. You can plant it into a vertical surface, and if you just once a quarter nicely shear it, it will do okay. It will not be bothered by the fact that it's growing sideways. In about a quarter, it will start to have its leaves turn up way. So that's when you shear it and you start it again. And it can look really nice. It works well. And you never have to fertilize it, and it requires minimum irrigation. Indoor living walls. Awesome idea, hugely costly, very big maintenance. And the cost of living walls, by the way, for the outside, the average cost is $75 per square foot. And that's not the metal frame, and that's not a fancy irrigation system. But that's right now what we're looking at on average. How many homeowners can afford that?
What's the maintenance cost of it?
That's even more. I mean, when you think about it, that you have to have intense maintenance on it so regularly, that doesn't just involve time, but also material, because you're constantly replacing growing media and plants. It's huge. So even for a homeowner, because it takes time. You might as well have a lawn and get a goat and have it mow for you. I mean, you know, I don't have a lawnmower for a reason. I'm not a big maintenance person. So living wall in the house. What are the challenges with that? The water, yes. Yes, yes. Even if you insulate things, you know how it is. If it can break, it will. So you can have this really great, well-built thing lined and retrofitted a million times, and it's just like totally sealed. And there will be the one little hole that happens and ruins your beautiful hardwood floor. So just know that it's great, it looks good, but it can be very, very much of a headache, and it usually is. Irrigation in a house, very difficult, even with drip irrigation, very difficult. And then you have other challenges indoors. Yes, you can grow tropical plants, but how humid our homes are. Not so much, right? You don't want it so humid. And then what about the temperature? It goes up and down, you know, and then you have sometimes like you in the kitchen, now you're baking and you're cooking because it's Thanksgiving, and then all of a sudden the plants are looking stressed.
You have to spray it constantly.
Yes, yes, you do. And then the soil temperature changes and this and that. So talk about maintenance. But for some people, that we here in the Northwest are not so big, the East Coast, more people can relate to is their only green space really is this in the house. There is no other green space. And let me tell you that Europe is just like that. I mean, they had done away with their forests a long time ago. And so a lot of times you have these cities where there is really the only green space is what they have up in the kitchen. It makes a difference for mood and all of that. And if that's the case, then let it be high maintenance. Because that's okay. It's like having a dog that you have to walk. If that's, you know, giving you so much happiness, then it's all worth it. And this wall can become something that they come home from work and calms them down. And then if it's food, because it's herbs and things that they can actually harvest, then now they have some dinner material too. Because that you can do in the house too.
It seems like though, I mean, I understand the comfort part of it, but having 10 pots on a shelf
Yes.
full of stuff would be a whole
Yes.
easier
Mm-hmm.
clean.
Yes. Yes. I agree. So here we go with the clover walls, clover and fern walls. These are the one from, these are all in Singapore. You can totally see the modular system that's applied here. This is the Vancouver one. Again, an awesome metal structure. This is the first installation. This is the second afterwards, what it looks. And now you go up there and it looks really nice.
So does the Goodwill wall.
Yeah, and finally now they're still maintaining it constantly. It's a constant problem, but they finally figured it out, and so it looks good. And in case of Goodwill, actually, it's a job training. Those people who are at Goodwill, they can now do things that they had no idea about before, and it's transferable skill. They can move around with that and use it in other plant-related things. So, fields. So it's just something to think about. That you have to know whether, but it's your choice. What do you want to do in that scenario, what you have, and maybe it makes total sense. But maybe there are better choices, like a shelf with pots, like Doris says. Up and go outside a little bit and look at certain things, whether or not that would work on a roof, or what would be the way it would work. And then we will look at an area. I thought about it a little bit. I know the campus pretty well, but we're gonna probably pick something. And I'd like you to do a quick design here in class and figure something, come up with a modular or a solid system. You will have, you know, probably half an hour on in a couple of teams. And it's not anything for a grade. I just want you to think about it and make sure that you put in practice a little bit of what we talked about, because it's a lot of information that we covered today. And then you can present it.